What's up, everybody? It's the Built Different Podcast. It's Ricky again, CEO of Extropian. Justin, Sean, coming to you guys. Today, we wanted to talk a little bit about sports betting and how large it's grown and, how big of an impact it's having in sports and just society as a whole. So, Sean, I know you kind of, dabble every now and then. You kind of you place a bet here and there, nothing too crazy, and you have some friends that do it. What are your thoughts on sports betting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's overall, a good thing like for sports, for the industry. I think more people are paying attention to sports that may never have gotten paid attention to if it wasn't for sports betting. And like there's just a lot more interest in general and you're not only gonna there's a lot of people now that they're not only gonna watch their team play, they're gonna watch other games going on because they have a vested interest in those games now. So overall, I think it's good. I think it's grown in popularity significantly. I think I read that in 2022, 19 million people had placed sports betting, and then by the end of 2023, they're expecting to be, I think, 2020 or 23 million. So that's a lot of people, and that's only with it being legal in 33 out of the 50 states right now.
33.
So,
Mm-hmm.
I can see it growing a lot bigger, and that's not including Texas, California, Florida. So those are three of the most populated states in the country and some of the biggest states in the country. So I see it growing a lot in the future. But overall, I think it's good. I think it's growing interest in the sport, and you know, um, especially with it being legalized, like they're tracking everything that's going on. It's much more dangerous when it's illegal, and then you're doing like the underground betting with bookies and stuff like that. That's kind of where you can get into a lot of trouble. So
How about you, Justin? Have you ever placed a bet? I know we always talk about fights all the time, and have you ever done any type of betting in the sports for like combat sports, any sport? Have you ever put any money down?
Uh, I think I did a couple times back when I was in college, but most of the time it's usually just bets with friends. And I stopped betting on like boxing, for example. I think I'm cursed. I think because I bet on probably like four or five boxing fights in my life, and all of them ended in draws. So I just kind of gave up.
Jeez, that is bad luck, man. Because that's like the least likely outcome in any fight.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think I'm cursed. So
you
I stay away from it now.
you got to start betting for it to end in a draw. Then you'll make big money.
No, because then someone's gonna win. Knowing my luck.
That would that would be wild. I mean, um, what
Ricky,
do
how
you think
about
of
you?
it overall? Like,
Oh,
I was going to ask him as well what he thought about it as well. Like, not just have you bet, but what are your thoughts on it and its effect on sports?
I think it's exciting. Like Sean was saying, it gives you like something to. It gives you like an interest in other teams that maybe you don't necessarily follow and games that you don't necessarily follow. It's like an added like bonus to paying attention to sports and stuff like that. And I mean, if you have the money, yeah, it's like a fun thing to do. Um, yeah, I think it's awesome. It's definitely growing in popularity a lot more. I definitely see like FanDuel and I forgot what the other one was. There's another really popular
DraftKings.
DraftKings.
DraftKings. Yeah. So like, and those are I think those are like single game bets or something like that, or single player bets, which is very interesting. Seeing how it's kind of evolved and there's new ways to bet and stuff like that. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, Sean, you were asking me which question, or were you asking me both?
Both is yeah, whatever you want to answer first.
um, no, I think it's cool. If it's keep stopping people from making bets and getting their legs broken, or ruining their family by taking out these crazy bets, and it's regulated. Cool. Um, Personally, like I've never bet. Vegas was huge for me for like many years, and I'll probably start going back for fights again. But even going there, like it's right in every, it's pretty much in the front room of every hotel. And my friends would go and, oh, you want to put any money on? I'm just like, I really don't. I don't want to be bothered. Like I don't want to lose it. You know what I mean? It's like because it's always like it's in fighting pretty much a 50-50 proposition unless you get in depth with it and start doing all the parlays and people. That's where it starts getting really complicated. Where I start like losing focus on like how to even bet is when there's all of these different parameters that people add into it. I think you told me about some of those, Sean, where you can kind of, reduce your risk by doing additional bets and, but yeah, even in the, um, I forget what they call it in the casino, the sports book in the casino. Like, I don't know, I just never really had an interest in it. I'm not against it at all, though. Like I said, like you guys said, it enhances the sport. The one thing I don't like in fighting is like when I'm watching the sport with somebody that bet and they're just watching the sport from the angle because they put the bet on the specific guy. I'm just like, dude, just watch the damn fight and enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be hearing about the money you lost and like you're hoping this happens and hoping that happens because you put money on it. Like, I just want to enjoy the fight. Um, but yeah, I think it's cool. Like you guys said, I think it's cool as far as like people watching more teams, people watching more sports. Like I've heard people betting on things that sports that like they'd never watch. Especially during this downtime during the off season of football, basketball. People will bet
Yeah.
on things that typically they wouldn't bet on and watch things they typically wouldn't watch. So but yeah, even individually betting with friends, I know a lot of people still do that as well, and that's kind of the old school bet, like and shout out to my friend D out there. I should have took like probably about $1,000 from you because this dude's always wrong. I'm always right when it comes to fights, and he always goes against the grain. You know what I mean? He asked me what my opinion is instead of riding with me, like and since I've been watching fights for forever, he kind of goes off on his own and does his own thing, and then always loses. So I mean, just you could need to ride with the winning team and listen to what I'm saying when it comes to fights. You'd be a somewhat rich man now, but I should take his money. But I like him. I don't want to do that to him. So, um, but yeah, Sean, what are your thoughts on? Justin did mention the FanDuels and the DraftKings, and you've had experience with those before. What are your thoughts?
I've never used FanDuel. I try to limit, how many accounts I make. I don't really feel like I need to have like 50 different sports betting accounts. And most of
Hmm.
the most of the like different betting promotions or organizations, whatever they're called, offer incentives to get you to sign up because the goal is once they get you to sign up, then you're more likely to keep your money in there or to place more bets or. So the hardest part for them is getting you to sign up, which is why they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on marketing and, getting TV
Hmm.
commercials and ads everywhere. That way, because all they need to do is get you in the door. And then once they got you in the door, they know that every bet that you make, they're making money on it, theoretically, unless you're like
Hmm.
good at betting, which most people aren't. So, um, I've used DraftKings. I like it. I used Caesars, and Caesars did a good promotion a year or two ago where if you bet over $100, you got a free NFL jersey,
Hmm.
which was cool. So, because it basically, if you were to buy an NFL jersey, it would cost you over $100. So, and they didn't care whether you won or lost the $100 that you put in. You just had to put in $100 and bet it within the span of like a month or something like that. So yeah, I thought that was a good deal, and a lot of sports books will do stuff like that to try to get you in the door. But yeah, I think they're all pretty similar. I think the lines are slightly different because of just the way that they do their calculations and the probabilities and stuff like that. But overall, they all are trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to get you to place bets and they adjust the lines based on new information or like if there's a lot of money being put on one side of the bet, then, they'll change the odds so that more people are placing money on the other side so that it's almost as close to 50-50 as possible. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, but I think something that you brought up was that, like with fighting sports specifically, there's a a bit of a weird aspect to it where it's not like always clear who won or lost. So it's like
Hmm.
that's something where it's like, you know, like it's not like football or baseball or soccer where it's however many who scored the most points or the most runs, you know, it's like it's kind of subjective. So I think that's kind of, you know, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but that kind of gets into like the sticky, sketchy part of betting, and you know, like hopefully it's not having an influence on the actual game type of thing. But I forget what question you asked. I guess which betting ones I
Oh,
used. I think.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think yeah, pretty much only DraftKings and Caesars. But I like both of them. I've heard good things about FanDuel. I've heard good things about what's the other one? Like MGM. BetMGM has one. Barstool
Hmm.
Sportsbook has one. I think they're all kind of
Hmm.
similar for the most part.
And Justin, it's kind of like you can attest to this. Like UFC, like I mean, they have a whole beginning segment where they have I forget the lady's name that comes on, but they have a whole segment where she comes on and does the I think it's DraftKings, and she analyzes the fights. And like one of the
Right.
cool things I've seen, and one area where I was like, man, I'd do this or give it a try was I think I saw one where you can pick like you have a certain amount of money that you're able to spend. They give you a budget, like say $500, and you and it's like not really $500. It's like a virtual 500, and maybe you're putting whatever you're putting down or whatever. But you can pick the specific fighters on the card, and you can pick. You can each fighter costs a certain amount, and you can put that amount onto the three or four fighters that you want. And I thought that was kind of a cool way of betting. It was a different way, other than the straight up who's going to beat who, what round, and by which route are they going to beat them by.
I think they call that like a DraftKings, or at least on DraftKings they call it like a lineup. I have a friend
Mm.
that does it. Pretty much every fight card, he puts together a lineup, and they give you points based on different things like how many strikes you land, how many takedowns you get.
Hmm.
And then if you finish the fight in the first round, you get like 100 points. If you finish it in like the second round, you get like 50 points. If you finish it in the third round, you get like 25 points. And if you win a decision, you get like 5 points. You know, something like so. Like when I have been with that friend, you know, during fights and stuff, he's always rooting for like a finish at the very end of the first round because that gets you all of the point. Like if you're punching someone like over and over, you're getting all the points for all the punches, but then you also get that 100 points because it's still in the first round. So it's like those are funny because it's like, you know, like
Like
you
fantasy
just
football.
sometimes you just want people, yeah, in those kinds of things you just want people to like be in a full out brawl, like punch each other as many times as possible.
it it's funny because you made me you reminded me of like one of the last fights that Justin and I went and watched together. Remember there was a guy that came in to EJ's spot, and he had bet on most of the fights, and then EJ told him, "Hey, why don't you bet on Alexa Grasso
Yeah.
submitting Valentina Shevchenko?" And everybody's like, Valentina, she's such a beast. I don't know, and the guy's like, eh. And EJ's like, man, I don't know. I have a feeling. And we went through all the fights, and he was doing all right. And I mean, she did that whole Valentina, I think, tried to do a spinning strike, and she ran up behind her and started choking her out. But I forget he would have made what I forget what he would have made. I think he was like $100. He would have made like 4,000 or four like 1,000 to $4,000 or something. But it was wild, and you could just see the life just kind of drain out of him when he realized that it actually happened. And that's where I get caught up with not wanting to bet because I'm just like, man, it's just like I'm gonna be so angry if I do something, and it's just such a crapshoot. You know what I mean? I don't. I like to bet. I like to do things that are more like I'm certain about. Like I'm in control of the outcome. Like you know what I mean? Because you're really
Yeah.
not in control of the outcome unless you're you're a mob boss or something. You put the fix in or something. But yeah.
Yeah. Funny.
Yeah,
That was
they
hilarious.
call it betting for a reason. You know, it's not a guaranteed way to make money, unfortunately. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it.
Yeah, what was surprising to me as well, and obviously this was a cool experience because you guys were both there, was um, taking a step back. Back in the day, like going to fights, going to Vegas, going watching UFC fights, boxing. I was just used to everybody kind of, just watching the fights. Maybe they put their bet in the sports book and they had their ticket or whatever. But what was really cool the last time we went and watched the fight card um, in Jacksonville, watching people betting in between rounds, like I had never seen that dynamic before. So it was really weird because we had a group of guys around us that were between rounds were like just going on their phone and scrolling through and doing things. Um, that I think obviously our cell phones, and Sean and Justin, you can talk about this as well, but having the cell phones and having the ability to just on the fly do things with internet, I think that's been a huge game changer. And I realized that during that fight, like people in between rounds, like it gives them something to do for one, and then two, there's just different bets that can, the lines are changing dynamically after every round, and odds are changing, and you can keep placing different bets in between.
Yeah,
Did you
totally.
guys
It's
have
Definitely.
crazy.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Like I remember, it might have been at the UFC event that we went to, but it's crazy to see like even just the minute moments in between rounds where people can just kind of use their phones to just bet like that, and even I mean, I'm sure people probably do that with other sports too, to a degree. It's crazy just seeing like
Hmm.
how specific the betting has gotten over the years. It's not just like necessarily who's going to win. It's now by how much are they going to win by or things like that. It's like the it's becoming very specific the different ways that you can bet, and it's crazy just how involved or how much it's evolved over the years.
Yeah, and I think too, when you're talking about like in between rounds and stuff like that, it you know, you can get a lot more analytical with it. And like, for example, someone who normally gets like a first round finish, if they get a first round finish, then they're fine. But if they're always getting first round finishes and then they get out of the first round and they haven't finished the person, you don't know if that person's stamina is going to hold up. You probably would want, if anything, to bet against them because it's like
Hmm.
they haven't been tested, like battle tested in the second round, third round, or even if it's a championship shit fight, then you got that fourth round, fifth round, and those can be deadly for someone who's not, if they don't have the proper stamina to last through that. Um, so I think that's one of the cool things about the live betting is like if you do enough research and like okay maybe this guy's a slow starter, like he's not really going crazy in the first round, but he really picks it up in rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, then like it's better to not bet before the fight. It's better to wait until after the first round. But vice versa, if it's someone and you can actually before the fight starts you can say, oh, I think that this guy is going to win after round 2.5 or something like that. So it's like you can make a bet that like he's gonna win basically if it or I put bets in that like if the fight goes to decision, I'm betting that this guy wins. But if it doesn't go to decision, then the bet just gets like canceled out, which is great because it's like certain guys are like either gonna like knock the other guy out or they're gonna lose the decision because they're just not a big like point getter and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So like that, I think that option is really cool and it adds a lot of like a lot of different dynamics to play with.
Speaking of just changes and everything, this is something I haven't seen or experienced, and I think you've kind of explained to me. We had a call not too long ago with a guy that I guess was more into it, Scott, um, that was into the micro betting. Um, I'm assuming based on everything we talked to him about, the micro betting is like a lot more parameters that you can kind of bet on. I think you and him were having a conversation about some of the crazy things like uh, around the NBA draft at that time, Sean. Like, what is from your understanding micro betting, and what how is that kind of a little different than this the betting tactics that we've talked about before?
Yeah, micro betting is, it can be anything from like very specific prop bets to, and a prop bet is, like betting that this guy that he's going to have over 40 yards receiving in the second quarter or something like that. You can bet something
Mm-hmm.
like that. What I think is starting to evolve and starting to become possible, but is a little challenging due to the time that it takes to actually place the bet, is betting on like specific plays. Like, oh, I think this play is going to be a run play. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
have to make that decision in however long the play clock is. What, 25 to 45 seconds? And
Mm-hmm.
like, are you guessing? Do you know? Like, do you kind of like study that? Like, I don't know how people know that information. I think for me, it would just be guessing if I were to bet it. But like that all can be combined into this term of micro betting, and I think that's something that is going to become more popular, especially as the technology continues to evolve, and the faster that you can get these bets in and placed and like keep it real time, um, the more of that you're going to see. Um, which I think is good. I think again, it's just another avenue for like more people to place bets on things, um, and it makes it not only the game is interesting, but you can make each play interesting if you really are have the money to be betting on every single play.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, I think the because of like what you mentioned, the regulations, because like we're kind of taking it out of the hands of like these bookies and things like that. That it's you remember like betting years ago was like automatically looked as a negative thing. You know what I mean? Now it's kind of almost like it's looked at as a hobby. It's looked at as a something to do around sports, some another kind of tentacle of sports that people get into. And I think with that as well, there comes some kind of celebrity with it as well. Like you look at Mattress Mac. I mean, he's like a household name anytime a big event happens. There was a guy I was watching out of Vegas, this guy Mazzy, and he turned it into a business like where he sells. You become a part of his group, and you get to, he gives you the tips on different events, and he's doing very well. Moved out to Vegas. And then you have like Floyd Mayweather, where he's showing his tickets, and there's Drake, where there's the Drake
Yeah,
curse that people talk about all the time with when he bets on them. It's like shit, lately people have kind of overcame that, but for the most part it's been weird. Um, so overall, I think sports betting, I guess you guys would agree, is kind of it's not looked at in a negative light anymore. It's almost not, I wouldn't say cherished or anything like that, but it's when somebody says I bet on something, you're not, parents and wives and just people in general aren't like, oh my god, you horrible person. You know what I mean? It's not looked at that way anymore like it used to be, I would say.
for sure.
I definitely I definitely think that it's you know like, as long as you don't have a problem, then it's it's okay. Like,
True,
it
true.
gambling is an addictive habit, so it's like
Yeah.
it's the same thing as alcohol or drugs. Like, alcohol is fine if you're above the age of 21 and it's legal, and you're not like an alcoholic. But if you
Hmm.
are an alcoholic, or if you're an addicted gambler, you should not bet on sports or anything, because that's not good.
You guys,
So
do you guys think that like gambling and sports betting has kind of shaped how certain sports organizations are run? Because I was watching a documentary a while ago on the Tim Donaghy, the NBA ref.
Oh man,
Well,
yeah.
I'm
I
not,
saw
yeah,
that one.
I'm not a big NBA fan, so I'm not super familiar with the story. But like from your guys' perspective, I'm not sure if you guys were fans back then when all that was happening. But like, did the NBA seem different after all of that, or do you think it kind of just was a rough patch that it went through and not a whole lot changed?
I still think some of the calls are weird. Like, not saying that they're done illegally, but I think there's always like sometimes a little bit of bias, or I don't know. I don't want to say that the league prompts teams to win are like the bigger market teams, but Yeah, some of the Lakers and the amount of calls they got during this offseason was a little crazy. Like they got, the disparity between what they got and other teams got. But I remember the Tim Donaghy saga, and I remember some of these other refs. I was a big AI fan, Allen Iverson fan, and there's been books written after the fact that they were putting the screws to Allen Iverson. Because they would do that all the time because guys would talk trash, and they take it out on them. And like Rasheed Wallace all the time was a guy that the refs always would target. AI, guys that they technically didn't like, they would call some specific fouls on them. But yeah, the Tim Donaghy thing was crazy, man. Like filtering down to like how far that went down, and how engaged he was, and then you retroactively look back at the games and look at how they kind of played out, and you're like, damn, like he influenced this team's playoff chances. You know what I mean? This one call that he made changed the dynamic of the game. So I remember some of those games, and I watched that documentary, and yeah, it's pretty wild. But I would say that the NBA probably took a closer look at what was going on. I don't wouldn't say I felt like there was a dynamic change in play call and foul calling and things like that.
I I remember watching the same documentary, Justin, and you know, I think first, even before he really got into the whole like betting on the games thing, he shed light on something that I thought was kind of crazy, which is that like, like he said in one of his first games that he called a foul on a star player. I don't know if it was Jordan or someone like, and some star player, and like after the game he got like, like chewed out for it. They were like, you can't call a foul on him,
I
like
remember
Hmm.
that.
he's a star or something. I'm like, so what? If he commits a foul, it's a foul. Like, I don't care if he's a star or not a star. Like, screw that. Like, I think that to me was like the thing that kind of like shocked me is like they have different rules, at least like back then. I don't know if they've
Uh-huh.
cleaned it up, but at the time they
I
had
still think it
different,
happens, Sean.
yeah, they have different rules
Yeah.
for the stars. Like the stars get away
Hmm.
with more things, or if you're like a villain star, quote unquote, you get away with less
Hmm.
things. I think a perfect example of that is Draymond Green. I think he's kind of like that guy that kind of talks back to the refs a little bit too much, and then like they call fouls against him, and like like sometimes they're warranted. So, I mean, he does do some shady stuff,
Kick
but
people in the
sometimes it's
nuts.
yeah, but sometimes they call something like that's like nothing, and it's like they give him a technical that like holds him out for playoff games or something like that. Like
Yes.
that's against
Hmm.
the integrity of the game in my mind. So I think
Hmm.
I would say it hasn't like severely influenced anything in my opinion, and I don't think the betting aspect of it, at least based on what I know about the situation, like had a severe long term impact on any of the games, but um I don't know. You never know type of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess we're going down the path of like we've talked about how it's been a good thing and how it's gotten people into sports more and gotten more viewership for sports that probably wouldn't get the viewership that it is getting now. But yeah, Sean, you pointed out one thing, the addiction to it. Yeah, that's something. Um, that's a big thing that I didn't even think about for this particular podcast. But it's huge. It's a unfortunate thing, and it's ruined a lot of people's lives, and it's unhealthy. And then Justin, you pointed out you started to take us down that kind of negative path of when sports betting goes the opposite way. Can you guys kind of talk about kind of I guess now that it's easier and now that it's more, there's more states that allow it, maybe some of the negative impacts of sports betting on teams, on players, and, society as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is what's going on in the NFL right now, which is that these
Hmm.
players are, no offense, but they're being idiots. They are betting on games like, and when you make a sports betting account, you need to like give the betting company like your personal information. Like you can't like make it pretending to be some random person. Like I think they like legitimately require like a social security number or something like that. So
Oh,
like
really? Mm.
they know who you are, like, and they can easily just tell the league, hey, like this person has an account, and like it's fine if you have an account. It's not illegal to bet on sports if you're an NFL player. It is illegal to bet on the NFL if you're an NFL player, which is what some of
Mm-hmm.
these guys are doing, and or like some of them are doing it in the like in the facility. Like, why are you betting? Like, just wait till you get home to place a bet, or like I don't know. Like it's so stupid the fact that these guys are like. I think they should be getting in trouble because it's so easily preventable. Um, but you know, you see good players like Calvin Ridley. I mean, he's a really good player, and he had to sit out a full year for
Yeah.
that. And I mean, you saw it even back in the day with guys like Pete Rose. That was before sports betting was even that
Mm-hmm.
like crazy. But
Mm-hmm.
his whole like career and like everything that people talk about with Pete Rose, it's about like sports betting. He can't get into the Hall of Fame because of sports betting. Like that
Mm-hmm.
sucks. He was one of the best players in like MLB history, and he's never going to make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
How, how about you, Justin? We've seen it in the fight game recently.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. Was it James Krause maybe or somebody else? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
it was
yeah,
a.
it's kind of I don't know. It's I feel like it doesn't. It's not a bad. It's not a good look for the sport. When you hear about like how uh, I can't remember if it was like he was training someone and then he found out about the guy's injury and then he told his fighter about it or something along those lines. And that's I don't know. I think that's kind of getting into really like bad lines and stuff and kind of putting like a bad spin on the sport, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure what the status of that whole case was. I haven't heard too much about that recently, but yeah, I don't like how that the direction the sport would be going if that continues, which I don't think it's going to ultimately, but um, yeah, I think it's kind of similar to like with the NFL. Like you should like fighters probably shouldn't be like place bets on stuff like that because it's kind of I don't know. I don't think it's a good look.
Um, from everything I understood, he was no longer allowed to corner any fighters. A lot of his fighters, I think they had to leave him as a coach, and he's a guy. I think he came. I think I remember him in the Ultimate Fighter. I think that's when I first noticed him, and he made his way up, and he had some good fights. But
Yeah.
yeah, he did that, and he. I'm not sure if he threw fights or if he just bet on his fighters or bet on the other fighter. I can't remember, but it got pretty crazy the dynamics of everything that he did.
Yeah.
And who's to say he's the only one that did it? But I just I didn't even know that fighters were allowed to bet on themselves because I remember watching I think Keith Thurman was fighting in boxing and he's like yeah during his press conference said yeah I put 500,000 on myself da 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 so yeah fighters yeah it's not regulated like other sports NFL because independent contractors for the most part what I mean they're not necessarily employees of uh, an organization. So I think they've been allowed to do it, but I think that the UFC now that's their thing. That you can't bet on. You can't if you're a fighter and you're fighting on that card, you can't bet on it at all. Because fight sports, what I mean, it's been kind of it's the one of those sports that everybody looked back in the day in the 50s, the 40s, the 60s, where there was mob bets and people were throwing fights and I mean I remember watching one fight. It was this guy. This was probably about 10 years ago. But the guy, I mean, full phantom fall. Like the guy threw a punch and, the guy didn't even touch him. The guy just fell on the ground. It was like shaking. And I'm like, come on, man. So I think it still happens, obviously, but it was one of the sports that had kind of one of the bigger, black eyes because that's it's easier to throw something where it's a 50-50 shot, one man or one man against one man, one woman against one woman, and you can easily like kind of just throw a fight or say, "Hey, I quit, I'm hurt, whatever." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And two, like I actually don't have that much of a problem with betting on yourself because like you can't like it wouldn't make sense if you're betting on yourself to win for you to intentionally lose. But
Mm,
I'd see, like I feel like it's a pretty dangerous slope where, oh well, you're allowed to bet on yourself, and then like, what if you bet on your like, what if you bet on yourself to like go over 3 rounds, right? And then like you just don't finish them for the first 2 rounds, like things
hmm.
like that. I feel like are getting a little like, so it's a very like, the more you let happen, the more that line's gonna get blurred, and then you start getting into the trouble parts. So I think it's safe. The safe way to do it is to ban it in general, like betting on an event that you're in, or betting on like the sport that you're in, which most of the leagues do nowadays.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
There's in the Premier League. There's it's been Premier League soccer. There's been some issues with sports betting there as well, and kind of one of the funnier cases from the like the optics of it. There's a player named Ivan Toney that plays for Ivan Toney plays for Brentford, and their sponsor, they have the sponsors on their kits. Their sponsor is Hollywood Bets, so it's like he's banned now for I think I forget how many games, like 20 games or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but literally the sponsor is Hollywood Bets. It's on his shirt, and it's just kind of like I don't know.
That's
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, right?
That
yeah.
that is funny. Um,
What do you
so
guys? Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I was gonna ask, as far as sports betting goes, like technology, like what do you guys think could like impact sports betting from the technology side, in the future, or even like near future, long term future? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I do. Extropian.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we. Let's go ahead, Sean.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying us. I mean, we talk about it all the time, and like it's always hard because I know we haven't shown off the technology, and data's a big impact on data has a huge impact on sports betting and where it's going, and like you said, the real time aspect of it, like especially with micro betting where you're betting. I mean, people bet on the script spelling bee. You know what I mean? There's just it's a data centric business. You know what I mean? And with that, there needs to be more tools. There needs to be more filtering. Like, these sports, the betting lines and those that set the betting lines are looking for more and more ways to assess a match or more and more ways to gauge what they think is going to happen. If they can make it as finite of a process where they're able to kind of, instead of just assuming something's going to happen, they can kind of make real decisions on how those lines are going to change or how they set how they set the lines in general based off of new pieces of information that they have. And that's where we come in, and we've had conversations with people, even the conversation I referenced earlier with Scott, how crazy things can get because of the crazy amounts of data that we can that our technology is able to spit out at rapidly at different areas at different sets of time, just date like how many just pieces of data can that we can give to a sports betting company or bookies or anything like that, and just first of its kind data. I think there's not nobody's doing what we're doing. It hasn't been done before. It hasn't been seen before. So just imagine, knowing what we all know, how crazy and how more accurate, I would say, the sports betting lines will be able to be with our technology.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll go ahead, Justin.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think we can definitely help. Like, it's gonna be even more granular with like the technology and the data we're
Hmm.
able to get access to. It's gonna be much more specific, much more detailed, much more in depth than I think what's currently available. So, yeah, I think it's only gonna go deeper and further the more the technology advances, or our technology advances.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both of you said. I think, betting can be done as long as there's, quantitative data that can be analyzed. And that's exactly what we're hoping to bring to the table is more quantitative data explaining different things, and, providing numbers that weren't available before. So if, when we're able to provide that, I don't see why that couldn't be incorporated into sports betting, and, create more micro betting opportunities and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of human elements that we're able to add into it. You know what I mean? A lot of a lot of things are based off of trends. They're based off of history. We're able to provide real time data points that nobody else is, and it's gonna be huge. You know what I mean? We've talked to quite a few people that are like, man, this is gonna make a big impact in sports betting. And I know we said we've been able to on these this podcast we've been talking about impacting so many different things, but that's just the diversity of our technology. You know what I mean? It has the ability because of how the user uses it, because of the data points that we're able to capture. It's going to help a whole heap of industries, and sports betting is one I'm really excited. Even though I'm not a betting man myself, I'm really excited to see how it's able to help sports betting, and the how dynamic it's going to make it, especially in real time betting scenarios.
For sure.
So so with that being said, um, thank you guys again for another great episode. Number one. Thank you, audience out there, for listening. If you're Angle, we're always presenting angles on this on these calls, but if you're Angle sports betting, give us a follow, make comments, and comment in our comment sections, and just follow our pages, and keep checking for our podcast and for our technology when it drops. Because if you're into sports betting, we're going to change the game, and it's gonna make it even more fun for you to bet. So. With that being said, like, comment, subscribe, and hope you guys have an awesome week and a spectacular weekend. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. Take care.